Hello and welcome to the Dits on Wrestling podcast. It is the Royal Navy's only pro wrestling pod. Probably. Still don't know to this point. It's been so long. Still don't know. Can't confirm. It is me, your host Dits, and my co-host, as is always the case these days, it is Anthony. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, as always. Anytime I can be here with you, which is weekly, I get excited. I get pumped. Ooh. I get overjoyed. But said. This week, that is what she said. But this week, I am even more excited. I am even more overjoyed. I am even more pumped, and any other superlatives for happiness and excitement you can add here, because we have a very special episode for everyone. We have a very special guest, a special interview. Man, I've run out of words. I'm very excited.
Yeah, we're welcoming Mike, the man behind a certain little video game you may have heard of that is coming out this year, RetroMania Wrestling.
Oh boy.
I mean, I mean, this is behind the curtain thing, but I think it's kind of obvious. We'll pretend that, oh yeah, we haven't had the chat. We've had the chat already. So, and usually we wouldn't reveal such things, but there is a little audio hiccup around the halfway point where things start getting a little echoey, but it's not off-putting. So I just want to throw that caveat in. If you get halfway through this and you're starting to get an echo, at least you can go, well, at least Dits warned us, and it's not a case of fuck this production, it's awful. Yeah, we've given you the heads up, so you can't say shit now.
Yep, we've given you that disclaimer, but again, nothing serious, nothing bad.
No. And it sorts itself out.
Yeah, it sorts itself out, and well, because you sorted it out, you put on your producer hat.
Yeah.
And this episode, again, we reversed it a little bit on this part. Instead of going the intro and going to the episode, we did the episode, and now we're doing this intro. And this episode has been one of our favorites that we've done, and we're not just saying it because we have a guest and just saying it for politics or to be nice, or because we think RetroMania is awesome. Like, this interview was just so fun and entertaining, and Mike was such a great guest, and he was passionate and involved and just such a good dude. And we chatted with him before and after, offline, before we were recording and after, and it was just such a genuinely awesome experience. We told him that like 97,000 different times. And we hope you guys enjoy the hell out of this episode and have as much fun listening to it as we did recording it, because it's really just, this game is awesome, and the concept is awesome, and the idea of where it comes from and how it was formulated, and just the origin story of it and of Mike as like a wrestling fan and gaming person. It's informative, it's cool, it's insightful. It's very much along the lines of when we sat down with Rich from WrestleCrate. So it's just another feather in the cap to us. But yeah, Mike was a great guest, and this is an awesome episode, and power through, listen to this episode, listen to it multiple times, because it's so full of awesome details and insightful pieces that you're going to want to know everything that comes through on it.
I could not have said it better myself. Couldn't have said it better myself. And the best thing is as well, if you do enjoy this episode, it's not the end for the Mike goodness.
Oh, it's not?
It's not. No, because midweek, in a couple of days' time, he comes to the captain's cabin to take on a world-famous wrestling quiz.
Does he indeed come into the captain's cabin? And he has himself quite a performance.
Yeah, that's what we'll say. Whether it's a good performance or a bad performance, well, we'll leave that up to your ears to find out. But let's not hold you any longer, because you're about to listen to some good shit, genuine good shit. But let's just get into it. Let's get into our chat with Monsieur Mike from RetroMania Wrestling. Joining us now on the DOWPOD, we have a very special treat, something that I've been looking forward to. I know Ant has been looking forward to for a while as well. We have Mike, the team leader, the godfather of the RetroMania video game, which is upcoming. July, it drops. We have him here right on the DOWPOD right now. Mike, how are you doing, buddy?
Great, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Like, I've been following this. It kind of like floated in the background for a little bit, and I was like, it sparked my interest, because I was like, what is this game? What is it all about? And then it just seems to have gained so much momentum since, I think it was probably about February, March time, and literally like every day I was logging onto Twitter. It was just like, there's RetroMania. And now I'm super pumped to play this. I'm so excited. I know, Ant, you're looking forward to it as well. You're the same as me. You got a bit of a geekdom when it comes to wrestling video games.
Yeah, definitely. We had been discussing what we were going to do for potential episodes. We like to plan things out, months in advance. And yeah, the one day Dits just messaged me and he was like, hey, what if, like, have you ever heard of like RetroMania? And I was like the sequel to WrestleFest, RetroMania, like that account? And he was like, yeah, the same, like, I think we can get an interview. And I was like, oh my God, like, do that immediately. Like, I knew of the game already. I knew of the account. I had seen, I lurk every once in a while on the Squared Circle Reddit page, and you've had multiple mentions on there. And of course, why wouldn't you? Like, I'm sorry, I'm extremely excited for this.
I love it.
We are wrestling fans, video game fans, nerds for this type of thing, and this is like 1,000% in our wheelhouse. And the fact that, yeah, you were able to come aboard today, I'm extremely appreciative, as is Dits, and yeah, we're extremely excited to have you on today to be able to chat with you about this.
No, I mean, I appreciate being on. I mean, I love the enthusiasm. I feel the same way, obviously, about it that you guys do. So yeah, let's get into it.
Beautiful.
So obviously you have a wrestling game coming out, which means you must like wrestling in some way, shape, or form. So like, let's just go all the way back to the beginning. Little Mike, when did you get into wrestling?
I would say, about probably, I can't remember exactly. It's between 8 and 10 years old is when I first started. I was at a sleepover at a friend's house. He put on WWF, and I saw Junkyard Dog, and I think there was an interview with Hogan. Obviously, back then, none of the stars, the big stars, really wrestled on the TV show. They were kind of saved. But, I went home, and I tried to find it the next weekend, and I couldn't find WWF because I waited. Didn't go on the TV in time. But I found the NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions.
Oh.
And I got hooked on them probably first before I got hooked on WWF. I ended up watching both of them, but I saw Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, Rock and Roll Express, Nikita and Ivan Koloff, Crusher Khrushchev, the Road Warriors, and all these guys. And I just, from that day on, I loved it.
Oh, I've got goosebumps right now of you just like rattling off all those names. And I love just the idea of that. Like, I feel like people, I'm not even, like, I'm still somewhat of a young adult, but I was about to say, like, people today don't understand, but they really like the idea of even that example of you being like, I went home and tried to find it, like, but I missed it and I had to find it. Today it's just as like, well, you could just like look it up on the internet and find it, or like you can probably search it on your guide on your TV and set it to record or whatever. But in those days, yeah, like, and as myself growing up in the 90s, yeah, if you missed Raw or you missed Nitro, you're done. It's not like, well, I'll just catch the YouTube recap like later in the week. It was like, no. So you had to make an actual effort into finding it. And then it's awesome that you were trying to find one promotion with WWF and it led you to your real first love there with Crockett.
Yeah, and the same thing happened a little later where I was trying to find Saturday Night's Main Event, and I found like that World Class Championship Wrestling was on at like midnight on some UHF station. And I honestly don't know why. I knew it was on NBC, so I don't know. I guess I couldn't find it, so I just looked to see what else was on at the time. And then UWF, the Bill Watts
yes,
UWF, not the one with that Dark Side of the Ring just did. The one before that.
Right.
But with like Dr. Death and Ted DiBiase and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, One Man Gang, and all those guys were in. And I was a big fan of that too. And they eventually merged with WCW, but.
Yep.
And it's nice to actually see somebody who's got into wrestling outside of the big daddy of it all. Like, because for me, like, I'm institutionalized to the WWE way, so I'm the other way around. So I've been WWE for like 19 years or something like that, and I'm only just branching out now. But I think it's funny how it seems to be a consistent level of when people start getting into wrestling, and it's always around that 8 to 10 year old range, because that's around the time when I started watching wrestling. And I don't know how you told the story of your dad going crazy at Hulk Hogan turning heel WCW. I don't know how old you were at that point, but I'd imagine it'd be around the same.
Yeah.
But the fact that you came in, your entry point was Crockett and all that kind of stuff, I think that's really cool. So going from that point and fast forwarding a couple of years up until, more present days,
Right.
leading into RetroMania itself, like, do you have any previous experience within game development or anything like that, or is this like a clean slate? You're taking a stab in the dark and just seeing how it goes?
Well, no, it's not completely a stab in the dark, but I don't have game development experience. I have my master's in software engineering. So I co-own another business that implements accounting and finance software. So I have a background in IT and technology, and obviously I have years and years of gameplay experience. Not that counts for much in development, but as far as like running a project, project management, things of that nature, I've 25 years experience doing that kind of stuff. So in that regard, yeah, I think I'm capable. And then I hired a team of people that all have game experience. I didn't get all new people to join the group, to join the team. Everybody I have has at least one published title under their belt, if not more. So that was important to me to get people. I'm the least experienced developer on the team. And not that I do much developing. I've occasionally gone into a couple lines of code and poked my head around, but for the most part, I have people that are much more experienced doing that.
So I did my research, and you stole a bit of my thunder with your master's line. But so yeah, I went and I took a peek and saw, your master's in software engineering, your undergrad degree in accounting, and all those things. And so where did the idea of, I guess you acquiring your master's and having that, how did you eventually, and especially with you mentioning like you've had some experience in coding, but not so much in game development, more along the game playing side. How did you eventually come to that idea of like, I want to do like a wrestling video game? How did that become like a reality for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a little longer. So I went to school, like you said, for accounting. I would say my senior year, though, is when Al Gore invented the internet. And awesome. So I really got into technology again. And as a kid, I like my father had this old 8086 computer that he got from work. And I think I was like 10 or 11 when I swapped out the video card in that thing, because he had bought one for me, but he didn't have time to install it. And not that installing a video card's that difficult, but for when you're 10 or 11, it's, it's daunting.
It's a mountain to climb.
Yeah. So, I was always into computers. I remember programming in BASIC on a tape drive. And when I say programming, I was really copying code from a book onto the tape drive to make fireworks was my big thing. That's what I could do then. So I always kind of had it in me where I thought it would be cool to make a game. So I was too late to change major. So I just stuck with accounting. And then a couple of years into my accounting career, I switched over to consulting. For software. So and that's when I got my master's. I went back to school and got that. But for my senior, or my last, not senior, but my last year project for my master's, I actually modified some game code for my project, like major modifications to a game. I had a little bit of experience, and the rest was all just kind of hobby level stuff. I dabbled here and there. So I didn't have a ton of experience, but I would say in 2010, it started to become a hobby where me and one other guy were working on it. And then WWE announced they were bringing back WrestleFest on the iOS. And that was like 2012. And I'm like, this is awesome, because I was annoyed no one had done anything with WrestleFest, Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, great, they're doing it. I don't have to do it anymore. And then it came out, and it wasn't really my cup of tea. So I was like, I started working on the hobby again, but I was in the middle of having a family. I think my third son was still young. He was like maybe 2 or 3 at the time. And I was coaching all my other kids, and I was co-running another business. So I just didn't really make the time for it. Fast forward to 2018 or end of 2017, still nobody's making the game I want to play. I want a 2D wrestling game that's an arcade experience, not like more of a simulation, but an arcade. So I was like, screw it, I'm going to do it myself. So it was really just like me being annoyed by, we have all these other games that the indie studios are coming out with, but no one was doing a kind of a WrestleFest reboot. and I decided to take it on myself.
And I love that.
That's awesome.
When you were in education, you did some modification of code on a game, and fast forward to now, it's essentially what you're doing with RetroMania, taking the WrestleFest engine, if you will, and updating it for. This is the thing I like. You're updating it for the modern audience, but it still has that retro feel, and that's something that I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
But something that me and Ant were talking about before we got you on, and something that we are we really want to know how it even works to get to this point. You can proudly say that you are the official sequel to WrestleFest. Like, how does that even come about? Like, getting the licenses and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it was almost like, I don't know if you guys watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, but real quick. So you know his concept of the spite store, where he opened this restaurant next to his rival just to spite him. And it was funny, early on when we announced some stuff or showed some early gameplay, one YouTube commenter is like, "You're just ripping off the WrestleFest engine. You hacked it, blah blah blah." And we wrote the whole engine from scratch. Like, It's not, I would maybe call it reverse engineering to an extent, but it plays differently. We had to change a lot of things from an arcade game gameplay wise to what we're doing. But anyway, for some reason that guy, and he poked fun at another spiritual successor, because I know that term's been thrown around a lot by indie devs the last probably 5-6 years. So I was like, screw this, I got to become the official sequel. And so I did a couple Wikipedia searches, found out that Arc System Works, who made the Dragon Ball Z Fighters game, and they have done Blaze Blue, Guilty Gear, among other things. They bought the Technos of Japan archive back in 2015. So they held the IP, and they really can't do anything with it because they don't own any of the characters, right? They can't do anything with the actual characters. So it's not like it could become an arcade one-up unless they work something out with WWE. And WWE doesn't even have the rights to all the characters either. So I reached out to Arc, and it took me like 7 or 8 months to get to the right person. I was randomly messaging people on LinkedIn that work there, both in Japan and in the U.S. Finally, I got somebody who had recently left there, but knew who I needed to talk to. And she was kind enough to set up an introductory email for me. And then about 2 months after that, we were able to sign the agreement.
Wow.
So that got us, from a marketing standpoint, that got us being the official sequel to WrestleFest. Because it's important to me. I love those Technos of Japan wrestling games. Like, they did Tag Team Wrestling, they did Mat Mania, then WWF Superstars and WWF WrestleFest. And I really want to carry on that lineage. Like, what if they would have come out with one more game in 1993? What else could they have done? Or really what I'm doing now. What if they came out with it now? What else could they do that they couldn't do back then? And so I really wanted to carry that on, and that's why the official sequel means a lot to me. I think they did a really good job kind of ushering in the wrestling video games. And I want to just go back to one more 2D game. And
I'm so glad you're able to now put up a middle finger to whoever that idiot was who commented on YouTube. It's just spiritual. Now shut up. It's official.
Yeah. I love that it started off of like a spite store type of thing. Like, look at this guy just said, you know what? Screw this guy. We're going to get the official licensing. That story is awesome. I actually... Again, that was part of my research. I saw the Arc System Works, and I love that question and how that came to be. And I guess in relation to that, so you have real-life wrestlers in this game, as Dits alluded to. You're taking that WrestleFest engine and that concept in that game and providing a modern feel and touch to it for today. So what does that process for you look like in acquiring I don't want to say like licenses or the ability, like how does that process work? Yeah, so how does that work for you to acquire that, to be able to put these real-life wrestlers in this game?
That was the most challenging thing and really daunting thing. I've never dealt with entertainers or celebrity at any level. So initially, I was going to do it all with YouTubers because they seemed to me a little more approachable than actual wrestlers. And I think, retro game, I follow a lot of shows like the Game Chasers, the Metal Jesus, Angry Video Game Nerd, Pat the NES Punk, RGT85, 8-Bit Eric, and all those guys, a bunch of others. And I always liked their content. And I was like, well, maybe I'll put these guys in the game. But eventually I was like, I got to at least try. And I was just thinking, how cool would it be if I could get the Road Warriors in this? They were the original boss of the original WrestleFest.
Yes, and
you
couldn't
I was like,
play
that
as
would
them.
really set the bar high,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
So I just went online and I found out there were a couple bookers that said they had relationships with Animal. And I got one of them to return an email, and then we hammered out an agreement pretty quickly, actually. And Animal actually owned the rights to the Road Warriors. He actually owns the Legion of Doom and Hawk and Animal. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Who was of all the people that are in this game, who was the hardest to acquire to license?
I would say, none of them were terribly difficult, I'll be honest. But the one that probably almost didn't happen was Johnny Retro.
That makes sense.
So John Hennigan. And it was really, it didn't have to do with money or anything like that. It was, in our agreements, we have kind of social media requests that they have to fulfill. Okay. And he wanted, he wasn't comfortable with what we were asking him from a social media standpoint. And I hadn't talked to him online about it. And he, once he explained myself, it was just really a misunderstanding. He made perfect sense. I agreed with what he was saying. And once we were able to talk through it on the phone, it was weird. Because I'd sent him artwork. We were ready to call it off. And I sent him some artwork. I was like, this is what you would have looked like. He's like, dude, do you have time to talk? And this was like at 1 a.m. And he just sent me, he's like, here's my cell number. Give me a call.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because I was up. I was working still, and I think he was working out. He was on West Coast time. And we got on the phone, and he's like, this is why I have a problem with it. And he made sense to me, and we just had to change the language of the contract. And what I found initially, I was worried when I signed these guys that I would have to really bug them to promote the game, because that's part of the deal. Obviously I want to sign them so they help get the name out there. But it hasn't been an issue with anybody. They're willing to promote stuff as long as they think it's cool. You know what I mean? Right. They like what you're doing. They like the artwork. They all have pretty big egos. You know what I mean? So when you show them something cool, they're more than willing to self-promote because it's helping them. It's helping them get more publicity. And it's helping us as far as getting the name of the game out there. So, it's something, we want to put in our legal agreements just to cover ourselves, to make sure they'd follow through. But I'm lucky in the fact that I've had to make 0 calls to anybody and ask them to do anything that they're not already normally doing.
And looking at the roster as a whole, I think it's not a random selection of people, but it's a very different set of
eclectic,
people.
Yes, it's an eclectic mix. I love that.
And you kind of cater to every audience, because you've got the people who still have that nostalgia for WrestleFest, and you've got the Road Warriors in there, so they have that feeling there. But you've also got some newer guys. You've got the likes of Tommy Dreamer in there. You've got Nick Aldis, which I thought was pretty cool when I saw that.
Real world champion.
And from looking at that, I started seeing that you had the actual set for NWA Power, and I was just like, hang on a minute, have they got a little bit of an association here with NWA? Is that an official thing, or have they just
Yeah, so you're going to definitely see more NWA content down the line, for sure. We have the 70th anniversary ring aprons that they used, and the backdrop to the entrance.
Oh, that's
we have
sick.
the NWA Power, of course. We have a mode in the game called 10 Pounds of Gold, where you got to fight through to beat Nick Aldis if you can.
Oh, that's sick. I love that concept. That was one of the things that struck me. Yeah, that NWA relation. I'm more, Dits is more WWE skewed, but I watch anything and everything from, I would say mid 80s on. And the Jeff Cobb character was the one that really, I was just because you don't get to see wrestling video games nowadays, other really than the WWE 2K ones, and that's just WWE guys. You're not seeing a lot of, I know what Fire Pro has done, but you don't get to see, it's not like Ring of Honor has a yearly game that comes out, or New Japan or anything like that. And when I saw that you guys had Cobb, that I just thought that was the coolest thing. And your caricature of him just everything, the development.
Yeah, we got to update that one. He changed his look on us a little bit.
He
Grew his
did,
hair
yeah.
out a little longer.
He went a little nuts. But yeah, that was the one that really drove. Like, I was already hooked, and then I saw Cobb, and that got me further. And
Dude, I love his moveset. Like,
yes,
I'm a big fan of him. The Tour of the Islands is currently my favorite move in wrestling right now.
Dude, it's so good. And like, I love. One of my favorite wrestlers of all time is Taz when he was in ECW. And so you give me a guy who wears a wrestling singlet and does suplexes and high impact suplexes, and I'm down. And when you add in the Tour of the Islands, which it is an awesome name for a finisher.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's super clever with his name. It looks good. It's unique. Yeah, he's awesome. And it's interesting to hear like the challenges obviously in the game development and in the licensing and character requirement and all of that. And I guess just because of the times and everything going on now, has there been, with everything going on with COVID and quarantine, have you guys faced any particular like new set of challenges that you guys have had to overcome, in whether it's production or potential distribution and everything going out?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got slowed down a little bit. Now, we were already fully remote. We have people working on the game in 5 continents. Not even countries, 5 continents.
You guys are global.
Yeah. So we have people in the U.S., Canada, Brazil, UK, Australia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Russia.
All the corners of the world.
Yeah, Romania. Like, I had a call earlier this week, and we had to find a time that worked for Russia, Brazil, the U.S., and Vietnam.
So super easy.
Yeah. So it definitely affected us. So it affected different people in different parts of the world, and just people were generally paranoid and preoccupied. So definitely we slowed down, and we've actually hired 2 programmers this last week, and then 3 more artists to try to catch up a little bit.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. Yeah. We've talked about the wrestling aspect a bit, and rightfully so, but obviously this is also a wrestling video game, and with you mentioning and referencing your coding experience and game playing experience, what was the, we spoke about what got you into wrestling. What was the thing that got you into video games?
So I it was the arcades because they were so big. So I'll give you away mine. I'm 44, so I grew up kind of the tail end when I remember of, I guess video game arcades were huge when I was like 5, 6, 7. Mm-hmm. So I remember there's specifically a restaurant chain in Northeast U.S. called the Ground Round. I know it was in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. I'm not sure how far north and south it went, but their big thing is they had an arcade in the restaurant. And that was my we went there maybe once every month or 2. Mm-hmm. And that's when I just fell in love with video games. And then whenever we would go on vacation, I was just hoping the hotel had an arcade machine. And then eventually we got an Atari 800 computer that my dad got from work somehow. So it was basically a 2600 type games, Atari 2600. But we had Centipede, Donkey Kong, Missile Command, Star Raiders, River Raid.
Classics.
Yeah, and that's and I've ever since then, I graduated from that. I saved up money on a paper route to buy a Nintendo. And then I traded in my Nintendo to get a Sega Genesis, bought a Sega CD, traded in both of those to get a 3DO, traded that in for a PS1.
Oh.
And then I kept that. I kept the PS1. I still have my original PS1. At that point, I think when the PS2 came out, I was working, so I could afford not to just sell everything every time.
Nice.
I always wanted a Neo Geo, but they were too expensive.
Yeah, they run a bit up there. I feel like every time I ask you a question, your answer answers my question and it goes to another. Because my next one was like, I wanted to know, how did you transition into console video games, and then what was your timeline and succession pattern, which you have already hit. So well done. And
a couple other things on that with that question. So I did have some PC gaming in there as well, and I've always been big on the PCs. I started building my own, which once you learn how to do it, it's not super complicated. I know a lot of people can do it. But when you're first time out, it's a kind of a daunting task. It's like Legos to an extent, but you can break shit a lot. break stuff a lot easier.
No, you can say shit. That's cool.
Okay. But really, I moved more into consoles because we had that 8086 computer I mentioned. I played this. One of my favorite games growing up was a game by Sierra Games. They did all those point and click games, like Leisure Suit Larry, Space Quest, Police Quest.
Oh, I know Space Quest and Police Quest.
Yeah, one of the ones they did was Heroes Quest, which was kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons type game. And I had that, and I remember my computer was too slow where you'd walk across the screen, and then you'd have to wait 2 minutes for the next screen to load. So that's kind of when I said, I don't want to be a PC gamer right now anymore.
I'm out.
Yeah, and that's when I kind of switched to console gaming. And really, I didn't have a strong enough computer to do much PC gaming up until I graduated college. So,
what's your favorite game of all time?
Ooh, WrestleFest. Not counting that one?
Yeah, not counting that one. I figured that would be the answer. And then my follow-up was, not counting that one.
I would say probably if I was on an island.
Yep.
Yep. It would be probably a toss-up between Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and the original Tecmo Bowl, not Tecmo Super Bowl.
Oh, the original.
The one with Bo Jackson. And actually, Lawrence Taylor, by the way, is the best player on that game, not Bo Jackson. But the original Tecmo Bowl.
That's a great answer. That game is legend. And the Tecmo Bowl series as a whole, like I again, growing up in the 90s, but then like I came across Tecmo Bowl once I was like 9-ish, 10-ish, because my family we were a Sega family. I remember being like little, and I remember for Christmas we got to like pick, and it was like, hey guys, we can get a system. Everybody, what are we doing, Nintendo or Sega? And I remember being super torn because I was thinking of getting Nintendo because Royal Rumble, I believe, was out for both consoles. And I loved Mr. Perfect. And Mr. Perfect was in the Nintendo
rosters were
version.
different. Yeah.
Yes, and he wasn't in the Sega one. But I also thought Sonic the Hedgehog was like the coolest thing. So we ended up going with Sega. And as we progressed through, and so I didn't come to Nintendo until later. And I remember playing Tecmo Bowl with friends of mine who had been playing Tecmo Bowl and they knew what was up, and everybody was like, oh, I'm going to pick the Raiders. And I was like, okay, whatever, pick the Raiders. And then I would get killed by Bo Jackson. I respect your opinion on Lawrence Taylor, but because Bo is on the offense, like if you pick the Raiders, it's over. You can't stop Bo.
Lawrence Taylor can. So I get away. Like I know like four guys that I grew up with from like grade school. We get together once a year, and it's like super, it's a geek fest for us. We sit around, everybody brings their bag of YouTube videos that everybody needs to watch that they haven't seen. We have a few beers and we play old school video games. And we've for the first couple of years, we started doing this when we were 30, so we've been doing it for about 15 years now. And we've had Tecmo Bowl tournaments. Yep. And I think we were the two best teams. I think were maybe the Bears and the Giants because of defense. Mike Singletary, but I won a game, and the only points scored were an interception returned for a touchdown by Lawrence Taylor, 6-0.
The MVP. That's crazy. Yeah. That's it. I have never been a part of I haven't gone crazy with Tecmo Bowl tourneys, and we really did it we did it a lot for like a 1 to 3 year span from like 8 to 11. Every Tecmo Bowl tourney, and this is not exaggeration, I have never seen someone win one in my presence that wasn't the Raiders with Bo Jackson.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't know if it's because we were little, maybe we weren't advanced enough, and it was just like, can't stop him. And so everybody would be like, no, I want to be the Raiders. No, I want to be the Raiders. And now I feel like I need to go back and redo. I feel like I need a time machine now. If you could also build a time machine after you finish this game, that'd be awesome. So I could go back and
I'll get on it.
Found knowledge.
I'm so jealous, like, listening to you guys talking about this, because my generation going in was, like, the PS1, and don't get me wrong, that's a pretty damn good generation to get into video games, but...
Resident Evil.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Resident Evil.
Tomb Raider.
Yes. Yep. But, like, even, like, the arcade boom, like, I'm jealous of anyone that was able to experience that. The closest thing I can get to that is going to the local bowling alley where they have like the worst arcade setup I have ever seen, and then anywhere else outside of that it's like 2-piece slots. There's no video games. It's like, is this what an arcade is in 2020? This is ridiculous. So like the jealousy that I have for all of you, like who was able to just live through that or relive it at some point,
What was really good about then is like I grew up like remembering the video game Crash of like '83. Now I didn't know what that at the time. Obviously, I had no idea that it was even going on. But all I remember is KB Toy Store, a local one, in the U.S., had bins of games for like $1 each.
Oh wow!
And it was easy to get your parents to give a kind of a new game for $1. You know what I mean? It was like the App Store of 1983. Everything was $1. And granted, I'd say we got probably 5 or 6 games that way, and 4 or 5 of them stunk. But we had one really good one, I remember, Journey to the Planets, which was awesome. But
that's sick. And we alluded to it in the beginning before we got officially on this call and started officially recording this episode. Although for everyone listening, we are podcast, we're not video, but you have been kind enough to be on this Skype call and be on video, and you have this awesome setup behind you. And for the people who are imagining what that setup is, give us a little insight into what you got going on behind you there.
Yeah, so what it is, it's a At Games Legends Ultimate Arcade. So if you go on YouTube, there's a ton of people reviewing them. It's gotten great reviews. Before the whole worldwide pandemic hit, the plan was taking this out with us because we've been to a bunch of conventions. We were at PAX East in February right before all this and brought the arcade machine. So it's a RetroMania themed At Legends Ultimate Arcade. Oh. So we were able to play our demo of our game on it, or our beta build of our game on it. Nice. And it comes with like 300 games preloaded, but you can also load your own games on top of that. Oh, wow. And it's like a multi-cade type thing. It's really awesome.
I like that phrase, multi-cade. That made me very excited.
Yeah, it has two joysticks, 2 spinners, a trackball, and like 6 buttons for each controller.
Oh, that's sick. I feel bad for all the people who are listening because I've been staring at it obviously like I'm paying attention to you speak, but I've caught myself like losing focus and just staring at it with glances every once in a while.
Yeah, it came out really well. A company actually near me, Arcade Graphics is the name of them online, that did all the graphics for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean, they applied them. We designed them, and he did some touch-up work on our designs to make it look better on the arcade.
That's awesome. I actually have a follow-up with that. With the original WrestleFest, how good were you when you initially started playing it? And so after that, I want to know, how good are you now at it? And how long did that take?
So I think one of the things, I went to private school growing up, and my best friend went to public school. So when I had a lot more days off, I went to a Catholic private school. I had a lot more days off than him. Mm-hmm. So whenever I had off, he would skip school and pick me up.
Nice, that's a true friend right there. True friend.
Yeah, we would go to the mall near us, and we would play $5 worth of quarters, then go eat lunch at Wendy's in the food court, and then come back, play another $5 worth of quarters. And we basically split our time between WrestleFest, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Awesome, yes.
X-Men, the arcade game.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
And maybe the one other one, maybe then Simpsons was out then too. So maybe Simpsons. I know we'd occasionally play other stuff. We played WrestleFest the most, though. So, obviously, I was pretty good at the Rumble. The tag team stunk because the Road Warriors were so overpowered. There's like double the amount of energy. Their damage did twice as much. And it was just designed to eat $1. So, at least to beat them, So it was a good game design decision for an arcade game. I would say now, though, it was also the first game I ever downloaded for actually the Rain emulator, even not MAME. It was on Rain first.
Oh, wow.
And now it's on MAME. I don't think Rain's probably not even developed anymore. But I got really good at it then. Like, I can get through most of it. I still think I need 2. I can't beat the Road Warriors on 1 quarter. It takes me. I can get up to them on 1 quarter, and then I got to put another quarter in to beat them.
Oh, I'm jealous. I like the actual like arcade games and being set up in different like areas and arcades and restaurants and all the things. I grew up with some of that growing up in the 90s, and so everything you mentioned, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, X-Men, Simpsons, WrestleFest, I caught them like on the back end. But console games have started to come out, so I was more proficient in those. And I remember there was this random mom and pop sandwich store that had WrestleFest. And my friends and I would go there and we would play it maybe like once every couple of months. And especially during the summers, we'd go like once a week. And I have never, to this day, I have not beaten the Road Warriors. I can't. And as soon as you mentioned how overpowered they were, I immediately wanted to punch through my laptop because I can just remember wanting to shake the machine down as this small little child because I could not get past them.
Yeah, you just run out of money.
Yeah, you can't do it. And I remember there's like 3 games in my life that I haven't beaten, and I include that in there, and I just always look back on it. And as soon as you were like, hey, they were so overpowered, I immediately went like, yes! Like I felt like the game was like, nope, you're not going to do this. No one's allowed to get past this. You can't do it.
Well, there was a lot of tricks in there, especially I've played it so much now in this development. Just we've been playing it over and over to, change things and get them up to speed. But they made so many design decisions just to get quarters out of you that we had to completely change for our game. So, for example, in the Royal Rumble for theirs, you could go in and you could body slam somebody right out of the ring, right off the get-go.
Yes.
And if you figured out that pattern, it made it pretty easy to clear out a lot of people. Now, in our game, we had that in initially, and it was just like not fun. So it was like because we also have their move. They bounced it a little bit because once someone took enough energy, you couldn't do the body slam anymore. You'd progress. But we didn't want to limit our players, and we let them really choose what move they're doing completely. You have much more control in RetroMania than you did in WrestleFest. We had to address that decision by how can we let them, at what point can you throw somebody out of the ring with a body slam or a press slam or something like that. So we've had to change all those gameplay mechanics to account for the fact that people aren't putting quarters in. With
changing those gameplay mechanics, how did because obviously this is a sequel and it's the sequel that you had always wanted, and that continuation just updated and more modern. What was, and you alluded to it a bit and mentioned some of the things with the gameplay mechanics, but what did that process look like for you where you were like, okay, this is what should continue, this is what we have to fix, this is what we have to change, especially with it coming from being a quarter-based, gotcha type of system?
I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't really foresee much of it.
Okay.
So the original design document was basically, hey, what if WrestleFest had a design document? What would it look like? And then I kind of just added features that I wanted added to WrestleFest. But as we've been developing it for like 2 years now, and and it's been nowhere near like follow the design document. It's been a lot of trial and error. And really what came down to was, is it fun? Is this more fun to play now? Okay. And we just need to make design decisions all based around the fact is the game more fun now to play?
That's pretty awesome. That's a good way to do it. Yeah, just keep playing and be like, hey, I'm enjoying this, or hey, this sucks. We need to change this because I'm not enjoying this whatsoever.
Right.
And to be fair, from what we can see at the moment, it looks like a very, very fun game to play. So, we were, saying that, we're actually nearly in June now. I don't even know what date it is anymore. Like, I've completely lost track. So we're nearly into June now. So we're looking at the game releasing next month. Is that still on target?
Ish. So there's a slim chance. So the way we could still get it in through July, I think it needs too much polish, to be honest with you. We have to get it in Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft's hands in the next maybe 3 weeks.
Okay.
And even that, from what I hear, they're behind. So I didn't even know if we would even hit July if we did that. We're still like, I don't want to change from our team standpoint. I want everybody working as if we're trying to meet that date. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to rush it out the door just to meet that date.
Love that.
I would rather spend a little extra time and polish it and make the experience that much better for everybody who's going to play it than try to meet an artificial date that basically I'm the one setting that date. I'm at a luxury where I don't have stockholders. I don't have a boss that I have to answer to. It's on me. The only thing I'm really answering to are the people that are supporting the game right now. Through just pre-orders or wish lists or just even following us on social media. It's amazing how motivating, social media is a double, edged sword where one comment can really annoy you and piss you off, but if you get rid of that and just ignore those, there's been so many great people that have given us motivation throughout this whole process. So those are the people, I want to keep happy, obviously. But I think they'll be more forgiving if, when it does come out, we have a more finished, polished game. And I'm not talking Duke Nukem Forever delay, you know what I mean? So, and I think, and that's why we started doing the videos twice a week now, because one thing I don't want to do is go dark on people and have people wondering, one, the people that are supporting us early with pre-orders on our website before it's even on the online shops, like, I want them to, be rest assured this isn't like a Coleco Chameleon or a, one of multiple probably Kickstarter games that just never came to fruition. We're completely transparent, almost to a fault, where we're showing glitches on our gameplay video. Like, I just want to be upfront with people and know, like, the reasons I'm making the game, and I'm pouring everything I can into it. And I think people appreciate that for sure.
Oh yeah, I would second that notion, like, completely, and not just because you're here and it would be awkward if I disagree with you, but you can tell obviously, like, it's your passion for games and for development and for wrestling. But also, like, again, you're a gamer, and myself, I'm a gamer. Dits is a gamer, and you could hear us as you were speaking, like, everything you kept saying about, we'd rather not rush it out. We'd rather make sure the quality and the polish, like, we just kept being like, yes, because that's exactly, like, what I would want to hear. I don't want a game that releases and then I have to be like, well, it's all right, but I can't wait for the update to come out.
The update, right. That's what you hear. When they update it, it'll be great.
Exactly. And then that begs the question, like, well, then why, if you needed an update, why even launch it? So I think you taking it with that pragmatic approach is something that will reward you. And that's coming from a person that is going to get this game and wants this game and that is also a gamer. And I think that's awesome. That's a great approach. And
yeah, I mean, obviously there's a business side of things. I'll tell you, for this game, it's secondary, though. The primary thing is I'm just making the game I want to play. And that's definitely my first motivation through every decision I make. But there is a business side where I also don't want to take a bath in making this game. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, we do have a marketing plan that we put in place the beginning of 2019 to kind of get us to first quarter 2020, which was our original plan. And that looked so easy back in January of 2018 when we initially said, we're going to start development. In a year, we're going to start posting, and that was the plan. We went from February 2018 to February 2019 just programming and working on it. We're to the point where we thought, all right, now let's start trying to build hype for another year before it launches. And it's just like, stuff, so much goes into it. And especially there's a reason there aren't a ton of wrestling games on the market. They're difficult to make. Big companies have failed recently, but even before the recent one, like I remember when EA got the license for WCW.
Yep.
They didn't do a great job with it, and they were probably the biggest publisher at the time.
Yeah, they were huge, and they were so successful.
Sometimes it's not a matter of just throwing money and resources at a game. It's wrestling games are just getting animations to look right without the clipping and all that. It's difficult and it's tedious at points to get it to look right and play right.
I know it's early in this process, obviously, and I don't want to jinx anything, but with you mentioning there, like you're creating this game that you just want to be made out of your love for it. In a perfect world, this game comes out and or I guess not even a perfect. What is your perfect scenario for how this game does? And in that scenario, is it something that could lead you to a sequel for this or further game development or further ideas? Like, is there something that you're looking at for this to potentially lead to?
Yeah, I would love to do more. Like, I've really enjoyed this process of like, I don't get me wrong, I actually love my other business. I really enjoy that. I love the problem solving aspect of it. But seeing I've never been in a creative side of something before, Yeah. And it adds it's a different level of fulfillment or different kind of fulfillment that you have. So just like every morning I get a new build because it's unique where my lead programmer is in Vietnam, so he works when I'm sleeping and I work when he's sleeping. So it's so every morning for the last 2 years, I've pretty much woken up to a new build of the game to test. And every morning I'm excited, you know?
Yeah, it's like Christmas.
And the days, there's certain days where you didn't get a lot done or something came up, and I'm really disappointed in those days. But for the most part, like especially the last like month, we've been really killing it as far as squashing bugs and getting more stable and really hammering stuff out. We're at the point now where we're looking for exploits and all that. So that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. But yeah, I would love to do more. I am already floating around and talking to certain people about other games. As far as a sequel, at some point maybe, but I think in this day and age with the ability to do additional updates to the existing game, it's definitely not going to be a yearly RetroMania game. I would love to support this game for a little while, get some DLC, a combination of free and paid DLC, not all paid. I think I want to give as much bang for that initial buck as we can as well.
So on the topic of DLC, I've already seen that Chris Bay has been announced to join the game. Like, who else? Like, who's your dream person you could get in that is actually achievable? So not somebody, obviously, WWE, because that just isn't going to happen. And I actually saw your tweet that you put out today saying, people stop asking about The Undertaker. He isn't going to be in the damn game. So who, like, out of people who are actually achievable, who is like your dream guy to get on the roster, or girl?
Yeah, so I want to get Magnum TA. He was my first favorite wrestler. Unfortunately he had that car accident or motorcycle, I forget. I think it was a car accident.
Yep.
But I loved his stuff early. He was awesome. And I think he's under some kind of licensing agreement, but I think it ends soon. And I think we're going to be able to get him. So I really would love to get him in the game. After that, there's a super long list of people I would love to get. From every generation. And it's funny, I'm always on the lookout for, you mentioned Chris Bay. I didn't know Chris Bay until our Indie Mania. And the same with Warhorse, who won it. I wasn't even familiar with those guys, and I became fans. And that's the cool thing about independent wrestling is there's so many guys out there trying to make it. There's really a cool level of different people that might do stuff that you like, I'm always on the lookout for more guys from our Indie Mania tournament as well.
Oh, that's such a good point, and that's an awesome thing to hear. And it also leads perfectly into my next question. So you mentioned who you would like to get into this game and how much you like Magnum TA. Who is your favorite singles wrestler of all time and your favorite tag team of all time?
Let's see. I mean, this is going to be kind of an obscure one, but it's more of a nostalgic one. I loved the U.S. Express.
Awesome pick.
Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. That's when I first started. They were feuding with the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. It was a WrestleMania 1 event. And and part of it was they came out to Born in the USA, and I was like Ronald Reagan. I didn't know what that song meant or anything. But as like a 8-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid, whatever I was, 10 probably, I love them. Like, I love Barry Windham doing the bulldog from the corner. Mike Rotundo would do the airplane spin.
Yes.
And I just love that tag team. And I really loved, like, a lot of those tag teams. Like, I hated the Hart Foundation, but, looking back, they were great to have in there. The British Bulldogs and their feud. The Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine. I love those tag teams. At one point, I could name every tag team that held the title from like 1983 or 84 to like 1992, 93. That's
awesome.
But I think, they're probably my favorite tag team. My favorite singles wrestler, if you look back for when I watched wrestling the most, which when I was younger, it was probably Hogan at the time when I was 10 up till 15. And I liked the Warrior too. I love Macho Man. And then he was evil again. I didn't like him.
Yeah, he was evil.
I love that. I love the rock and wrestling era. You know what I mean? I really did as a kid. That really, I had those big LJN completely. SD Jones was the one I had.
Oh wow.
But Hogan was, now I don't know. He might be overexposed or whatever, but he made like the 80 because I was like, he showed up in Rocky 3. I was just like, oh my god, this is awesome. You know what I mean? Like Mr. T and Hulk Hogan were in Rocky 3.
Yeah.
You know, I love the A-Team. And you know, I was watching wrestling. It was like, say what you want about WWF at the time, but they really hit on all cylinders right around WrestleMania 1. You know, I remember watching Piper and Orndorff beat up somebody. I thought it was real, you know, at the time. And
the good days.
Yeah, so, you know, then I like Sting. I like Surfer Sting a lot.
Okay.
You know, I liked Barry Windham when he was in the NWA as well.
Okay.
I was always a big Barry Windham fan. I mean, if you have to say, like, I watched the Attitude Era, but not as much as I watched the earlier stuff.
Where does
I definitely watched it, but I just didn't watch it as much because that happened. Attitude Era really started after I graduated college. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't have as much time to sit down and watch wrestling for 3 hours or 6 hours a week as I did while I was studying for the rest of my life. But I had a lot more free time.
Where does that makes sense. The little line there that you had, where did the hate for the Hart Foundation come from?
Oh, I remember I just remember they were good heels. Like Jim the Anvil Neidhart kind of was scary looking, and the laugh he had kind of freaked me out a little bit as a kid. And I love the British Bulldogs, you know, and the British Bulldogs were chasing the Hart Foundation.
Yep.
To win those titles, and they went back and forth, and you know, I just always, you know, and then, you know, they started later on. When Brett turned signals and eventually became a babyface. But, you know, as growing up, I hated Jimmy Hart. I hated the megaphone. I wanted to ram it down his throat. And that's the reaction he wanted. You know what I mean? Just, you know, I remember wanting the Islanders to beat the Hart Foundation. It just didn't happen. And then when Strikeforce beat them on television, it was like out of nowhere because that stuff didn't really happen much then.
Right.
When, you know, Tito Santana for Dits, Tito Santana and Rick Martel were the Strikeforce. If you didn't know that.
I only found that out when we were doing the questions for your quiz, which is coming. I was like, who the hell are the Strike Force? And then I found out going through that.
Well, you still got to ask me that one. I want to look smart if that's on there.
I'm going to be honest. I was just going to message Dits, like, for your recap there of, like, tag teams and things that you liked when we do this quiz, some of the things you started rattling off, I immediately was like, oh, shit. He's going to
Don't worry about it.
He's gonna.
You know, I didn't. And it's funny because I had a PlayStation, not an N64, so I didn't really play which a lot of people consider the greatest wrestling games of all time.
No Mercy and WrestleMania.
Yeah, like I had WWF Attitude.
Oh God, yeah.
On the PlayStation, I actually liked it. Like I remember making Magnum TA in that because it had a belly-to-belly suplex, but. Power Move Pro Wrestling was on the PlayStation. WCW versus the World.
Yep.
You know, I had them, and then I went from that, and I think I got a Saturn. Like after it was pretty much a dead system, just to import 6-man scramble Fire Pro. And played that. And I remember trying to get that modded at a guy at Funcoland that was going to do it at his car or something. I don't know. It was kind of
something sketchy.
Yeah, something really sketchy. The underworld of modded video game consoles. I remember taking my PlayStation 1 to some place in Northeast Philly, these Russian guys who were like brilliant engineers, electrical engineers, to get them to install a mod chip in my PlayStation 1.
That's awesome. I love like the seedy underbelly.
Yeah, and that was to play Fire Pro Wrestling G.
Oh wow!
Without having to like swap it or do something weird like that.
At least when you got a chip for your console, it was worthwhile. I think I got a chipped Xbox 360, and that was just so I could just play games on the cheap or for free. It didn't actually have any rhyme or reason.
I'm not a complete Boy Scout. I might have done that for a few games.
I love that. Just yeah, oh, I'm gonna go to northeast Philly, and yeah, I gotta go to like basically like the mod underworld, and I'll be back in a couple hours.
You can be that person that's like, I know a guy.
Yeah, that was it. Find somebody online. And it was weird because I ordered the mod chip, but I didn't know who could install it. And I remember my dad is an engineer, and we took apart the PlayStation, and then there was this plate on it. He doesn't do much soldering. We would have to desolder that, and there was like probably 15 or 16 wires with it. So I just randomly looked up some electronic fix-it shop. And I remember going down there, and it was kind of like they opened a garage door, and I walked in. It was like they were taking apart cars or something.
Or bodies.
Yeah, I don't know. But I was like, and not all of them spoke English. And I was like, am I going to make it out of here? I just want a video game thing modded. I don't know what the hell I'm getting myself into.
I just want to play games, and now I'm going to die. I don't know what's going on.
But, yeah, I mean, but the N64 games, I've since gone back and played them. But, growing up, and I didn't play them at the time.
I remember playing those when I think I must have been about 11 or 12 when I first played WCW NWO Revenge, which is an incredible game. And then No Mercy just completely built on that. I never played WrestleMania on the N64, but I have such fond memories of going through No Mercy. The amount of hours that I've put into that thing is ridiculous. I had sleepovers like every week. I didn't care. I didn't want anybody coming to me because all I had was a PS1 and a PS2. But my best friend at the time, he had the N64, he had Revenge, and he had No Mercy. And I was like, I'm sleeping at yours tonight. There's no question. And we would stay up until like 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
and just
that's awesome.
Plow through that game. It's such a good time, and that obviously evolved into the SmackDown games as well. Did you play much of the SmackDown games, the early ones?
Yeah, I played some of them. I played a couple. They were on PS1. I remember having one of them on the PS1. Maybe the first two were on the PS1.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then they went to PS2. I still didn't play a ton of them. I was playing a lot of Fire Pro at the time.
2D.
Yeah, and then I got a Dreamcast after like probably a year or two later because Fire Pro D came out, and I imported that. So I played a fair amount of Fire Pro as well.
Your heart has always been aching to get back to WrestleFest, and yeah, that 2D landscape is your home. Yeah,
I preferred and be it nostalgia or just my age or whatever, I preferred the 2D stuff over the 3D, personally. I liked sprite artwork. I still like sprite artwork to this day, for other games as well. So,
no, that's fair. That's a fair estimation. I think, and nostalgia plays into it too. I'm even thinking for myself, like, and this isn't just me. It isn't just me saying it again because you're here. Like, I am genuinely excited for this game. I haven't had a wrestling game, I think, since one of the SmackDown versus Raws, I think on PS2 or maybe PS3, something like that. But my favorite wrestling games are Royal Rumble and Raw for the Sega Genesis.
Yep.
And especially Raw because the 1-2-3 Kid was in it, and Doink, and you could hit people with the bucket and the chair. Like, the chair was better, like what you could hit people with. I loved that. And then, yeah, my peak time was Revenge, No Mercy, and WrestleMania 2000. And then once, like, I tried to get into the games that came along, and it all turned into like SmackDown and SmackDown versus Raw, and it didn't click with me. And I think part of that is I liked the engine that they used on 64, and I liked what was had on Sega Genesis. But I think also when you combine the preference for that with those were like my formative years. Those were my age, like 5 to 14 years old type thing, where like I really got to sink my teeth into that. And for you, that's what like the WrestleFest and the 2D like landscape was for you. And so that makes sense that you would harken back to that as much as you could.
And I think with wrestling games now, it's a big complaint, especially over the last couple of years with 2K taking over the mantle of the WWE games, and even a little bit before there, like the arcade side of WWE games has gone away in favor of simulation, which I am not a fan of. Like, I used to love, you literally just press one button to punch and one button to throw somebody, and I was happy with that. And and then it's evolved into like, oh yeah, let's start the match with some chain wrestling, and then you have to press this button to do another move, and then you press this button to go into another mission, and then you got to press 6 buttons to transition into a simple body slam. It's like, no, this is not for me anymore. So like when I obviously saw RetroMania was coming out, I was like, this is a breath of fresh air. Like it's about time that I looked forward to a wrestling video game coming out, because I haven't been excited about a wrestling game since maybe midway through the SmackDown versus Raw series. So like this is big for me. Like, and I've played WrestleFest, but it was such a long time ago that I did, because I think my granddad had it and I played it. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But I was young. I didn't really know what the hell was going on, so I don't really have memories of it. But like, I'm looking forward to like experiencing a game like this now, and it will probably be in the same vein as how you perceived WrestleFest when you started playing it. So I'm really excited, and like the passion you have for this game, and just I like the fact that you don't have anybody breathing down your neck. And this is your baby. You can do whatever the hell you want with it, and like you said, like you are making a game that you would play, and that is such a refreshing take. Like, I mean, I'm not saying I speak to game developers every single week, because I don't. Like, I think you're the first person I've actually ever spoken to. But like to hear that passion, and to not have anybody like, well, no, you can't do that because we need to appease this audience. Oh, no, we can't do that because you need to appease this group of people. Like, it's nice that there's a game that's coming out that is a wrestling game, which I'm a big fan of. It's a video game in general, but it's also a game that the people behind it I'm really passionate about it. They've had no restrictions or anything like that. It's a passion project. I'm so excited. I really am. And again, I'm not, like Ant said a few times, I'm not just saying this because you're on the show.
No,
right
I appreciate that. No,
like,
you can tell you guys are fans of just wrestling and video games in general. You know what I mean? And that's what I am. And I'm just in a position to make it. I got a bunch of great people that are working with me that I'm kind of making my dream happen.
That's awesome.
And before we wind up the RetroMania side of things, because of course coming up on the show you are taking part in that said quiz. Over the course of the 2-year development up until this point, and even going forward, like you can probably like look ahead and see what's coming up. Like, what is the proudest like kind of moment that you've had in the development cycle with RetroMania? Something like maybe that something clicked and you was like, this is it. This is going to be incredible.
Well, I'm still pessimistic, because initially when the first time we showed it publicly to anyone other than like my kids was Too Many Games, which is it's a convention in the Philadelphia area, and this was last year in June. I was really nervous going there, thinking, one, no one's going to even stop at our booth, and if they do, they're going to hate it. It's just like, and I'm not a super negative person. I'm a fairly positive person, but it's just like, is there a reason this game was never remade for the last 25, 30 years?
That's fair.
I think this is like the longest time between sequels maybe ever. I got to call Guinness and see if I can get certified or something. But, but after that weekend and just basically nonstop people coming over and playing it and pretty much giving really good feedback, and that was a super early build of the game. That weekend I felt really good. I mean, that was definitely fulfilling, and I had met Tommy Dreamer there for the first time, and that was really cool. But I would say really the first time was we ripped sprites from the original WrestleFest, and funny you said Mr. Perfect was your favorite. That's who we ripped.
Awesome.
And he was the first. We got him in the game doing a grapple and then doing a body slam. Or no, snapmare it was.
Okay.
That was the first move we put in. And it wasn't even a background of a ring. It was just a checkered background. And I was able to run around with Mr. Perfect. I was able to walk. I was able to run. I was able to do a drop kick, a running drop kick, and I was able to do a snapmare. Awesome. And I was just like, this is awesome. Like, I didn't even need any more than that.
I'm good. Yeah. I'm set.
And I'm like, we can do this. And that really is what set it in and set everything in motion.
That's awesome.
And I think, I mean, looking at social media, because you do have a really good following on social media, and I know checks out Reddit pages every now and then. And before we had you on, he said like there is literally nothing but positive feedback within all the columns and stuff on there. And I literally had to scroll through Twitter before we came on, and like I'm not seeing anything negative apart from people going, well, give us DLC, or I'm not going to support the game. And that's something that I like, that is refreshing. You're saying, look, we'll see how we do at launch, and then we'll go from there, because I like a company that doesn't give you false promises. Like, how many times has that happened, especially over the last, 5 years, with big publishers coming in and saying, you're going to have all of this stuff, and it just never happens. So it's actually refreshing for you guys to go, look, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll build from there.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I mean, here the facts are that I'm funding the game. I don't have unlimited resources.
Yeah.
I put aside, I've saved money to do this. I had to pitch the whole thing to my wife and get her on board, and know we weren't going to lose a ton of money in doing this.
Right.
And I don't have unlimited resources to put in a create a wrestler at launch, women and men at launch, create a belt, create an arena, all that stuff. Like I don't have the resources right now to do that. But what I do have the resources to do is make a fun wrestling game that has more than just basic options. We have a ton of different match types.
Yeah.
I think we have a strong roster. It's eclectic, but I think it has a little something for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And just that aesthetic, or that retro feel and an arcade style. And if we can prove that to the fans that, hey, these guys know what they're doing, their game's fun, I enjoy playing their game, I'll support them, and then I'm more than willing to reinvest into the company and add more features to it. Do a combination of paid and free DLC down the line.
And to be fair, that's the kind of stuff that's going to keep people coming back. So why throw everything in there when you don't have to at this point? Like if somebody put in the Create a Wrestler down the line, that would draw, like, if people have kind of moved away from it and gone on to the next thing, like if you throw Create a Wrestler in there, like, people are going to flood back. So it's not, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing not to be doing that, like, regardless of whether you could do it or not. Just hold back on that good stuff. And the fact that, again, like, you're doing paid DLCs and free DLCs potentially is good stuff. But I keep saying it, but I'm so excited for this game to come out. And it has actually been a pleasure having you on, Mike. It really has. Like, we've been looking forward to this since I first set it all up. We are big video game fans, wrestling game fans, and fans of RetroMania as a whole. So having you on has been a great pleasure. I'm sure I'll speak for both myself and Ant on that one.
No, it's been fun. I love talking to you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And before you go, is there anything you want to plug? You've got a wrestling game coming out very, very soon. But is there any social media handles that you want to get out there so people know where to find you?
Yeah, just we're at Retrosoft Studios pretty much everywhere. RetroManiaWrestling.com. You can pre-order for the Switch and Steam right now on our site, and will be available for pre-order in all the online stores 30 days out from launch. And just follow us on social media. I think we have a pretty good Twitter feed where we're not just spamming you with pre-order the game. It's just wrestling and video game related stuff most of the time, I would say.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's a very fair assumption. I frequent that page often because I am a legit fan, and you're not just spamming hey, don't forget this, or hey, here's this detail. It's actually got good quality wrestling content. So yeah, good times, good stuff.
And sadly, Ant, I have to ask for your plug now, if you want to get that out of the way.
Oh, me? Yeah, I can plug myself. I am Anthony. I am the co-host on this wrestling podcast, and I also do a solo podcast myself titled Wagons and Warpaths. It is a Buffalo sports talk podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Wagons_Warpaths. I'm also a featured writer for Last Word on ProFootball.com. I cover the Buffalo Bills regularly and other trending NFL stories. And in my Twitter bio is the episode link tree that contains all the links and platforms for the Wagons and Warpaths podcast, including Apple, iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. And you guys can catch me here every week as the co-host on the DOWPOD.
And I needn't bother saying where you can find us because you are listening to this show already, so you obviously have your own favored podcast app. So we are there, but we're pretty much everywhere in that regard. But with social media side of things, I only really frequent on the Twitter sphere. So at Dits on Wrestling is where you'll find me, and also on YouTube. go subscribe to Dits on YouTube, because all my episodes go up there as well as other additional content, which is nice. But Mike, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we look forward to the game coming out and seeing how that all progresses. And I don't know. I would love to have you back on when the game is out and it's been out for a little while, just to kind of gauge what your thoughts are, like post-release. Yeah. So it'd be an absolute pleasure.
See if I'm still happy.
See if you're just as passionate.
Screw these people on Twitter. They don't know what they're talking about.
But no, it's been great having you on, buddy. And DOWPOD listeners, I will see you. Well, me and will see you next week.